Hello everybody, I'm Raphael Perry and it's time once again to delve into the Fighting Fantasy Classics. Because as luck would have it, just, well, technically yesterday now as it's gone midnight, Temple of Terror was released. And I would love to dive in and experience it once again. Before I do, a little bit of a chat. Obviously, first thing first, there is my incomplete House of Hell attempt. As those of you who were watching are well aware, I got confused by the infamous confusing door situation in House of Hell on the upper floor. There's one room on the upper floor where leaving through the same door you entered does not lead you to the location outside where you wanted to go. It forces you to go round a corner and off down another corridor, thus rendering the other doors that led off that hallway inaccessible, and confusing you as to where the hell you are and making you think that the place layout doesn't make any sense. I know, bizarre, right? Well, there's no such issue with Temple of Terror. So I think because I got confused and lost my place in House of Hell, I went on a bit of a frustrated rampage, made it back down to the ground floor of the house, might have missed some important things on the top floor, might be okay. But I think it's probably best if I come back to that playthrough at a later time or just start again and try to avoid getting confused by the awkward, confusing door. Now, Temple of Terror is one of the harder Fighting Fantasy game books. It's right up there with, well, it's no Champions of Chaos, but it's kind of right up there with, I don't quite want to say Legend of the Shadow Warriors either, but some of the other infamously hard ones. It's possible that I might miss something quite early on, which will doom me to failure, so I want to be careful of that. But look, we've got this gorgeous Chris Achilleos artwork for a cover here. I mean, isn't that just great? That's magnificent. So let's dive right in. Also, by the way, I want to point out, some of the book covers have oddly corrupted with this recent update. So, yeah, Warlock of Firetop Mountain front cover is corrupted, as has Bloodbones. I don't know why. Now, I know some of you would like me to skip the rules and get straight to the gameplay, and I also know that we may have viewers who aren't entirely familiar with the Fighting Fantasy rules system. Now, back in the day when these books were in the high street bookshops, and you know what, they still might be in some places, you just had to say to a gamer, skill, stamina and luck, and they knew immediately what you meant. They knew the rules. They didn't know if it was a +2 damage on luck or +1 damage on luck book. That varied. So, what do? Do I skip the rules? Do I read through the rules and give you guys a timestamp to skip to the gameplay? I'm not sure. But overall, I think I'll take a somewhere in between approach. The Temple of Terror is a Fighting Fantasy game book, an interactive adventure in which you are the hero. You can only win by choosing the correct path, finding equipment, avoiding traps, and surviving combat. Now, this book is very much a true path book. If you deviate too much from a path, you shall perish. It's also quite a tricky one because of something that makes the path much more challenging later on towards the end. And that's one of the more enjoyable parts of the adventure, to be honest. So, let's go. Adventurer. Correct skill, unlimited bookmarks, hardcore, lower skill. Could get tricky. Free read? No, I think we'll go adventurer. And I'll just only use bookmarks at episode ends to keep things fair. So, I don't know why these Tin Man remakes roll stamina first, because it always was roll skill first, but anyway, there we go. Ooh, that's a little bit on the low side. Okay, 17. For skill, or what? Oh my god, this is doomed to failure. And luck. Okay, so basically we're playing King Marek from Dragon Age, right? Oh dear, it's going to be bad, isn't it? So, you will start your adventure with a bare minimum of equipment. You may find other items during your travels. You are armed with a sword and are dressed in leather armor. You have a rucksack, haversack or backpack on your back to hold your provisions and any treasures which you may come across. You also carry a lantern which lights your way. We don't start with 10 provisions this time. That's unusual. Okay. Before launching into this, I want to point out, this is the first Fighting Fantasy book to hint at a continuous story and a returning hero. More on that around the end of the intro, I think. Perhaps it was because he was born during a full moon, with wolves howling around his mother's forest hut, that Malbordus' nature was evil. Perhaps it was something more sinister than that, but it is certain that, after his mother abandoned him, Malbordus grew up in Darkwood Forest in the care of Darkside Elves. He was taught the elves' wicked ways and also discovered powers of his own. He could make plants wither and die simply by snapping his fingers. He could make animals obey him with his piercing gaze. The elves urged him on and helped him develop his powers so that they could teach him the arcane and evil magic of the ancient elf lords. Magic so vile and powerful that it kills unworthy users. Kills unworthy users. Remember that. In pursuit of such evil powers, Malbordus grew into manhood. In order to prove to the elves that he was ready to receive the Elf Lord's knowledge, he first had to pass a test. He was ordered to journey south to the Desert of Skulls and find the lost city of Vartos. In the city were hidden 5 dragon artifacts, which he would have to find and collect. A simple incantation would bring the dragons to life to serve the forces of evil. Malbordus would then instruct them to fly back to Darkwood Forest, where a massive army would be assembling. He would recruit the ancient powers and lead the hordes of chaos across Alancia in an unstoppable wave of death and destruction. It was only by a stroke of luck that these terrible plans were discovered. On the edge of Darkwood Forest lived a strange old wizard named Yaztromo. Something of eccentric, he lived alone in his tower, practicing simple magic and communicating with animals and birds. He was always willing to sell small magic items so that he could afford to have brought to him delicious cakes from all over Alancia. His sweet tooth was the cause of his only link with the outside world, as he rarely left his tower. It was therefore much to everyone's surprise that he came huffing and puffing into the village of Stonebriegde. What could possibly have forced old Yaztromo to venture through Darkwood Forest to Stonebriegde? All the dwarfs who lived there were eager to find out, and a message was sent to Gillibran, their king. After the rigours of a recent quest, you were resting in Stonebriegde, enjoying the merry company of the dwarfs. Your wounds are almost healed, and the local blacksmith has honed the blade of your sword as only dwarfs can. Resting on a porch with your feet up on the railing, you are intrigued by the companion in front of you in the village square. Intrigued by the commotion in front of you in the village square. Followed by a throng of inquisitive dwarfs, Yaztromo climbs the stone steps of Gillibran's house and is warmly greeted at the top by the king. The crowd falls silent when Gillibran raises his hand and Yaztromo turns to speak. You slide out of your chair and join the crowd to hear what the wizard has to say. With a glum expression, his face almost as long as his beard, Yaztromo relates the bad news concerning Malbordus. The dwarfs look up apprehensively as though expecting the 5 dragons to descend upon them at any moment. He calls on them to show courage, saying, "Friends, look on the bright side. At least we are warned of our impending doom thanks to my pet crow, who overheard the conversation between the Dark Elves and Malbordus. What we must do now is find someone who can reach the lost city before Malbordus and destroy the dragon artifacts. We need a fearless young warrior who is willing to risk life and limb to save us all. Is there one among you who would volunteer?" Each dwarf looks around to see if another has dared to accept the challenge. Standing there, watching the worried dwarfs, you realize that there is only one thing you can do. With a wry smile on your face, you raise your arm in the air and offer your services. Yaztromo sees you and says, "Haven't I seen you somewhere before?" "Never mind, you look like the kind of person we want. Make way for our brave adventurer. We must leave for my tower immediately. Come along, let's be off. You have a lot to learn, but I cannot teach you much until we are safely through Darkwood Forest and inside my laboratory. So this here, haven't I seen you somewhere before?" And the last few pages are a distinct reference to the Forest of Doom, in which the hero did indeed go to Yaztromo at the beginning of the adventure before heading off into the forest to find King Gillibran's warhammer. Because everyone knows, if dwarfs are going to fight trolls, you need warhammer. Other tabletop war games are now available. But this is the beginning of a chain. So, obviously, after Forest of Doom and Temple of Terror, there then at some point comes Council of the Snow Witch, which I think might come before Temple of Terror, which is a prequel to Forest of Doom, and includes 1 or 2 of the Forest of Doom characters. However, after this we also get the Legend of Zagor towards the very tail end of the series. I think it's book 57, 58, maybe 56. And in that one, Yaztromo also hints at you having been the former hero in Forest of Doom and Temple of Terror. Now there's also the Death Trap Dungeon trilogy, where you have Death Trap Dungeon, Trial of the Champions, which doesn't need to include the same hero, and then was it Army of Doom or Army of Death, which assumes you're playing the hero who's defeated the previous 2 dungeons. You hardly have time to cram your belongings into your backpack before the impatient wizard leads you out of Stonebriegde towards his tower on the southern edge of Darkwood Forest. And we got this lovely curly ring here. A nice spot of filler art. Oh, there he is! For an old man, Yaztromo is surprisingly sprightly. You cross Red River and the ploughed fields beyond, and soon reach the edge of the forest. Yaztromo still doesn't stop. He takes a narrow path leading into the dark wall of trees. The light fades, branches and knotted roots obstruct the twisting path and make the walk very tiring. You ask Yaztromo why he seems unconcerned at the possibility of being attacked by forest monsters. He chuckles and tells you that his magic is well known and respected by all the creatures for miles around. None would dare challenge Yaztromo. After spending a peaceful night in the forest, you reach Yaztromo's tower by mid-morning the next day. You follow him up the spiral staircase to a large room at the top of the tower. Shelves, cupboards and cabinets line the walls and are filled with bottles, jars, books, boxes and all manner of strange artifacts. Yaztromo slumps down in his old oak chair, by now looking quite tired from the long journey. He reaches into his pocket and pulls out a fragile pair of gold-rimmed spectacles. After placing them on his nose, he peers at you over the top of them, and you feel quite unnerved by his piercing gaze. Finally, he says, "Anybody who would hope to defeat Malbordus must certainly know a little magic. You look bright enough to learn some, but I don't know. I don't think you have the time to absorb the 10 spells I would like to teach you. By the way, I would like you to know how privileged you are to learn my magic. But a crisis is a crisis. Well, let's get on with it. Which 4 spells shall I teach you?" You think about the task ahead before telling Yaztromo your choice. You only need to take 1 of each spell, as they can be cast multiple times as long as you have the energy to cast them. Open door, creature sleep, magic arrow, language, read symbols, light, fire, jump, detect trap, create water. 3, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, so we're not going to another page. Right, let me see. Creature sleep would be a good way of avoiding combat, and our Gervan here is not the greatest combatant. We do have 10 provisions. Yeah. Fire will certainly have its uses beyond combat and dealing damage. I'm thinking language, read symbols, to jump, and open door. Are these wise choices? Well, let's take read symbols. The read symbols spell will allow the user to read any runes or magic symbols. It drains 1 stamina from you when cast. Yes, let's take that. Let's also take... Wait. Create water. We are going into a desert. There is a way of surviving without the create water spell, but it would certainly make things a lot easier. If I take create water, probably wouldn't be able to take my language spell. Let's take open door. 2 stamina, got it. If we were slightly more competent, there's a tongue twister, then we could do without creature sleep and magic arrow. Let's say no language. Let's take jump. 3 stamina. Let's hope I don't have to use that at all. And detect trap or create water. In theory, 2 stamina, trap might cause barely more, so a trap might be very deadly. Let's take create water. Won't drain any stamina. Okay, yeah, let's do that. We have our 4 spells. And of course we got our classic illustrations here. I'm not sure if this book has a coloured illustrations option. The old wizard looks at you solemnly and says, "Every minute is vital. You must begin your journey immediately. Without doubt, Malbordus will learn of your mission to thwart him and may send an assassin or 2 after you. My crow will lead you as far as Catfish River. From there, you can either take a river vessel to Port Blacksand and then a sailing ship south, or journey overland to the Desert of Skulls. A grim task is ahead of you, but our thoughts will be with you." Yaztromo leads you back down the spiral staircase and out into the open. Suddenly he gives a shrill whistle. A large crow immediately swoops down from the top of the tower and settles on his shoulder. "Now, Crow, guide our friend as far as Catfish River and make sure you keep a good lookout. The last thing we want is an ambush on our own doorstep. You shake hands with Yaztromo and reassure him that you will destroy the dragons of Vartos before Malbordus can attain his evil goal. He smiles and hands you a pouch containing 25 gold pieces, then he commands his crow to fly south. The crow squawks and flies off. You hurry after it, turning just once to wave goodbye to old Yaztromo. Walking through the tall grasses, a shiver runs down your spine at the thought of Malbordus's assassins coming after you. You travel steadily south, only deviating once to circumvent danger spotted by the crow. 3 hours later you arrive at the banks of Catfish River at a point where it is spanned by a road bridge. An old barge is moored to a jetty beneath the bridge, and you see several rough-looking characters unloading sacks. Now, I managed to turn this page with double-click before, and I can't work out how it's not happening now. Oh well. Should cross the bridge or buy passage on the barge to Port Blacksand. Well, Port Blacksand is a pretty dangerous place. And any sailors from Port Blacksand are likely to rob me. But I do think, hang on. Going on the barge circumvents some danger at the price of some coin. It's not going to be completely danger-free. I have memories of going on a ship or boat. Also memories of being attacked by dark elves in the woods. I can't remember exactly what the safest or correct thing to do is. I do know that I need to get to the desert. Once in the desert... Sorry, these are like 20, 30-year-old memories, right? In the desert, I need to encounter the giant sandworm. And I know I could be confusing it with the giant sandworm's tooth from Beneath Nightmare Castle, but I'm pretty sure I need to obtain the giant sandworm's tooth in the desert in this one for the final showdown with Malbordus. However, there's also a puzzle later on related to giant sandworms, which could be where the confusion with the sandworm tooth is coming. So, if I go by boat, do I miss the opportunity to get the giant sandworm? I think I do go by boat. Because our Gervan here is pretty useless in a fight. After watching the crow fly back towards Yaztromo's tower, you follow the path to the jetty and walk confidently up to the first crewman you come to. You ask to talk to the captain. He eyes you suspiciously and after a long pause says, "Follow me." He leads you onto the barge and knocks hesitantly on one of the cabin doors. A gruff voice shouts, "Enter!" A crewman opens the door and gestures at you to enter the cabin. You stride into the cabin and see a stocky man dressed in clothes that have seen better times. He asks you your business, and you tell him that you wish to buy your passage to Port Blacksand. "Anyone who would pay to get to the City of Thieves must be either desperate or insane," he says, laughing. "It'll cost you 5 gold pieces." "You know, we shall pay. I'm not going to haggle." If I try to haggle, he will suspect that I'll have money left over after paying him and be more likely to try and rob me, so no. The captain smiles as you hand him the gold and tells you that he hopes you will enjoy the river journey. You shake hands and walk out of the cabin. The barge is neither very large nor designed for paying passengers, but you find a coil of thick rope on which to lie. After your long walk, you are soon sound asleep and do not wake until one of the crew taps you on the shoulder to say that Port Blacksand is in sight. You stand up and watch the sinister-looking city grow larger as you approach. 10 minutes later, you pass under a great arch to enter the city walls. The crew soon have the barge moored, obeying the frantic orders of the captain, who is obviously eager to load up his waiting cargo and leave before nightfall. You bid them all farewell and set about looking for a place to stay the night. The shadows start to lengthen as you walk through the narrow streets and alleyways. Suddenly, an old man in tattered clothes jumps out of the doorway and says, "Looking for a bed, stranger? I know a good place that offers a room, soup and bread for only 1 gold piece. If you're interested, follow me." That's a very good price. That's a suspiciously good price. This feels like a trap. But I also feel that I should venture into the trap, being prepared. And I'm being pestered on Steam, lovely. The old man hobbles ahead of you along the streets and stops in front of a dilapidated house. He knocks loudly on the door 3 times with his stick. Suddenly the door flies open and 2 rough-looking men run out, brandishing cudgels. You hardly have time to draw your sword before you are set upon by the robbers. You must fight. Well, hey, if we perish, we get to play again with better stats, right? Uh-oh. We'll take it. Yeah, you take that, robber. Ugh. Uh-oh. We take it. We have rations. And I'm thinking at this point, we need to use every bit of luck we have when we land blows. Luck it. Yeah. Okay, fight on. Oh. First robber down. And there will be the second one to deal with. Okay, he also has an odd number stamina, so we will use luck on it. Excellent, it's a +2 book. However, we are taking a kicking. Alright, we're gonna have to luck this. Okay. We'll try luck one more time. Well, we are triumphant, but we're also going to eat some provisions because we're going to die. You look around, but the old man is nowhere to be seen. Rummaging quickly through the robber's pockets, you find a small brass telescope and 3 silver buttons. After packing away your finds, you set off again in search of a place to stay. You know, that telescope could be quite useful. So, obviously, it would seem that our poor Gervin here is not long for this world. It's okay. If he perishes, we'll get to create a new hero and try again. Looking up, you see a road sign indicating that you're in Clog Street. You walk down it all the way until it ends at a T-junction where it meets Harbour Street, which runs parallel to the shore. You look out to sea and watch the setting sun sink slowly beneath the horizon. Darkness envelops you and you wonder where to go next. At the end of the street to your left, there are lights shining in windows and you can just hear the sound of singing and laughter. You decide to head towards the lights and soon find yourself outside the Black Lobster Tavern. A notorious location indeed. You walk through the doorway into a smoke-filled room where seedy-looking characters sit at crowded tables, laughing, joking and singing. You walk straight up to the barman and ask if he has a room for rent. Luckily, there is one available. You pay him 1 gold piece of a room and ask if he knows of any ships which may be sailing south the next morning. Well, I might do, he says, somewhat cagily. But information does not come free in Port Blacksand. Another gold piece and I'll introduce you to the ship's mate. Once again, you reach into your pocket and pay the barman, and I imagine many eyes in the room observe the coin leaving the pocket and are aware there's probably more. He leads you over to one of the booths along the far wall of the tavern and points out a man with a silk scarf tied around his bald head and an ugly scar running down his left ear to the middle of his chin. Gargo is his name, says the barman. You sit down next to Gargo, introduce yourself, and ask if you can buy a passage south. 10 gold pieces, and you'll have to work for your food, comes a curt reply. Gargo does not look like a man to bargain with, so you agree to his price and pay. We set sail 1 hour after sunrise. The name of the ship is the Belladonna, and you'll find her at the end of the jetty looking down from the tavern. I'll see you in the morning. I'm going back to the ship now, says Gargo. You decide not to get involved with any of the tavern's characters, but to retire to your room. You stand up and walk toward the stairs, but a large man carrying 3 flasks of ale bumps into you, spilling the drinks on the floor. I think he just robbed us. We could offer to buy him more ale, or tell him not. This is Port Blacksand. You don't be too charitable in Port Blacksand, but tell him not to be so clumsy. I'll show you who's clumsy, snarls the short-tempered man as he smashes the flasks into your face. Here's 1 stamina point. Fight the man? No. No, I'll go up to my room. To the jeers of the crowd, you make your way towards the stairs, following the example of the burly man. The crowd pushes and jostles you until you reach your room. Once inside, you lock the door, but find to your horror that you have had your pockets picked during the commotion. All of your remaining gold pieces have been stolen. You also lose 2 luck points. You settle down to sleep, cursing your luck, and wake at dawn after a restless night. To make matters worse, you find that you are covered from head to toe with inflamed bites from bedbugs in your straw mattress, and you start to scratch madly. Wasting no more time in the inhospitable Black Lobster, you make your way down the jetty to the Belladonna, which you see is flying the skull and crossbones, the flag of a pirate ship. Walking cautiously up the gangplank, you step aboard the ship. And that is probably a good place to leave our first episode. Now, I'm not feeling too positive about poor Gervin. I reckon he might not survive this quest. But let's at least eat some more provisions while we still can. There we go. I hope you've all enjoyed this first episode, and I do look forward to seeing you all in the next one. But I'm going to say bye for now, and cheerio everyone.